Have you ever questioned if your teacher hates you? I wish I didn't have to, but yep, my teacher hated my guts, and she went out of her way to make it very clear. I'm Lori, by the way. I'm 15 years old, and I guess you could say I kind of stand out because of my looks. People say I'm kind of pretty. Anyway, this year I started high school, although I only joined halfway through the year because I was off sick for 6 months with glandular fever. Yep, I had the dreaded mono. I was so tired of lying in bed feeling sorry for myself, so when the doctor said I could finally go back to school, I was over the moon. Little did I know what was in store for me. On my first day, I had to show all my teachers my hospital certificate to explain why I'd missed so much of the year. When I gave it to Miss Atkin, my math teacher, she smiled and said, "Welcome. Nice to see you feeling so much better." I smiled back at her and said, "Thank you." And I was about to walk away when suddenly she said, "Excuse me, you're Lori Hannison?" Her face looked all weird, and when I told her, "Yep, that was me," something inside her changed. She gave me a cold stare and told me to go to my seat immediately. I was confused a little bit about her attitude, but then I moved on from it. The most important thing was how I could catch up with my class. After missing 6 months of math, I was super behind and couldn't understand anything. My mom had to hire a tutor for me, and he was such a good teacher. Only after 3 months, I finally caught up with them. I had a notebook from our sessions with lots of notes inside, and whenever I couldn't remember something, I'd just look at it. Well, one day, I had it on my desk at school, and Miss Atkin caught me seeing my notes. She marched towards me, grabbed it, and slammed it down in front of me. She was so angry and got right up in my face and said, "Never, ever bring another teacher's notes to my class. Do you hear me?" As she said that, a little bit of spit flew out of her mouth and landed on my nose. I was horrified. Why was she so angry at me? It kinda scared me, and I thought maybe she was just angry because I wasn't as good at math as everyone else. After that, I didn't dare bring my notebook to class, but sometimes I still struggled, so I'd ask my friend who sat nearby to help me. Miss Atkin always caught me asking her and would put me in detention. One time I just sneezed too loud and she gave me detention. I mean, can you even believe? It annoyed me so much that I started to rebel. I'd often fall asleep in her class, and I seriously lost all motivation to do well. And that's not all. One day, I wore a new dress to class, and I swear I looked exactly like all the other girls at school. But Miss Atkin publicly embarrassed me by making me stand up in front of everyone, then said, "Girls and boys, Lori is a fine example of someone who pays more attention to what she wears than to studying. Don't be like Lori." I could feel myself blushing, and I wanted to cry. She was deliberately being mean to me, and I had no idea why. I was not that kind of girl. I normally loved studying, and I didn't care about clothes and shoes at all. I couldn't say anything, though, because if I spoke back to her, she'd give me a worse grade. What made it all even worse was that she was also the cheerleading coach, and she had her pack of cheerleaders following her around everywhere. One time I was standing in the hall talking with my friend Joe. We'd been best friends since we were like 3 years old, and we also live in the same street, so we'd grown up together. Joe always had my back. So we were standing there chatting when Miss Atkin and some of her fave students walked by. Suddenly I heard one of the girls say, "Oh look, surprise, surprise, it's Lori flirting with a boy again." Then one of the other girls said, "Seriously, she's such a fake. I mean, she's using her illness to get attention from boys. How pathetic." I couldn't believe it. Did they think I was deaf or something? They were the ones who were fake with their thick layers of makeup and all of their gossip and drama. I didn't really care that they were saying these things, but what really got to me was the way Miss Atkin laughed along with them. I actually saw her nod her head, so she agreed with them. I knew that wasn't okay, and Joe saw it too. He was so angry and grabbed my hand and said we had to report her to the principal. I stopped him though and said, "Just leave it. I am still the new girl here, and I don't want to cause any drama. And anyway, I have a plan." I smirked at him as I said this. So, Miss Atkin has this policy where if someone's phone rings in class, they have to answer it on speakerphone. And that policy includes her, too. So that day, I pretended to bump into her as she entered the class and watched as her phone dropped out of her hands. I quickly picked it up and apologized for being so clumsy, but at the same time, I unmuted it when she wasn't looking. Easy peasy. You see, I'd arranged for Joe to call her. This was going to be hilarious. Sure enough, 5 minutes later, her phone started ringing loudly. Her ringtone was Beyoncé's Single Ladies, and everyone burst out laughing. She freaked out and quickly grabbed her phone to cancel it. But Joe was persistent. He just kept calling, and everyone in class reminded her of the policy, so she had no choice but to answer it. Well, just wait for this. She answered, and suddenly Joe's voice filled the room. But he'd put on a funny accent to make himself sound older. "Honey, don't forget about our secret date at our favorite hotel tonight." Miss Atkin looked like she wanted to die. She said, "Who is this? I don't know you." Then Joe said, "Come on, baby, what's up? Is your husband there?" Miss Atkin was now visibly shaking and said, "You've got the wrong number." But Joe wouldn't stop. "Aw, you're so cute. I'll see you tonight, baby. Get ready for a fun night. Wink, wink." At that, Miss Atkin hung up and the whole class was just deathly silent. I had to bite my tongue to stop myself from laughing. Joe had really outdone himself. However, I hadn't exactly thought it all through, because a couple of days later, Joe and I were about to walk home when he got called into the principal's office. I went with him, but they wouldn't let me in. I could see Miss Atkin in the room along with the principal and Joe. She'd somehow found out that it was Joe who'd called her, and now the principal said that Joe would be expelled and that his parents would need to come in for a meeting the following day. Oh my God, this was all my fault. When he came out, I rushed over and started apologizing, but Joe said, "Don't worry, I did it, so I'll take the responsibility." I was beside myself with guilt. I just kept saying, "Joe, no, this is my fault. I'm the one who should be expelled." But Joe wouldn't even listen to me. Well, that evening I told my parents the whole story. I was crying as I told them, and obviously they were angry, but they were also supportive. The next day, Joe's parents came for their meeting. The principal was there, and the school board, and of course, Miss Atkin. Luckily, my parents arrived just in time to interrupt the meeting, and we burst into the room. We told them the truth, how I'd been so ill and had to get a tutor, and that's why I carried that notebook. Then how Miss Atkin had treated me so badly and been so rude to me the whole time. I told them the phone call incident had been my fault and that Joe had just wanted to help me. Suddenly, Miss Atkin stood up and pointed at me and said, "I knew it was you. You spoiled brat. You should be expelled." What happened next was crazy. My mom jumped up and said, "How dare you speak to my daughter like that? You hate her because she's my daughter. Get over it, Angela. It's been years." Well, Miss Atkin ran towards my mom and said, "You're a horrible woman, and so is your daughter. You deserve each other." She was about to grab my mom, but my dad jumped up and stopped her. I didn't understand what was happening. Everyone was so shocked. The principal looked so puzzled. Then he told us all to go home and calm down. When we got home, my mom sat me down and said, "If you're being mistreated, you need to tell us. Don't suffer it out alone, okay?" I told my mom I was fine, and that school was great, but then my dad interrupted and said, "You're fine? Don't lie to us. You were almost expelled." Then my mom said, "Honey, calm down. It's not her fault. You saw her teacher. She's a demon." Then my dad just laughed, and I was so confused. Then he said, "Oh yeah, Lori, we should have told you this already, but Miss Atkin was at school with us." Then they told me how the three of them had gone to high school together, and both my mom and Miss Atkin had a crush on my dad, so they became sworn enemies. They fought all the time, and Miss Atkin had been expelled from school because of my mom. Of course, my dad hadn't known all of that back then, and he'd fallen in love with my mom. Wow, now I understand the real reason Miss Atkin treated me like that. She was obviously still angry at my mom, and when she'd seen my name, she hadn't been able to control her anger anymore, and she'd just released it all on me. My mom said, "Lori, you look exactly like me in high school. Because I was pretty, so many people were jealous." Then she turned to my dad, smiled, and said, "I can see that Joe is quite similar to your dad. You should be careful." At that, Mom and I burst out laughing. My dad was just speechless. And guess what? It all worked out in the end. Miss Atkin got reassigned to another school, and Joe and I were only suspended from school for 2 weeks. Now we're closer than ever, and there's definitely some real chemistry between us. Finally, high school is getting good again, huh? When my boyfriend and I broke up before heading off to different universities, I never imagined that my love life would take a pretty dramatic turn, where I ended up being the third wheel in an affair. Let me backtrack a bit. I'm Juliana, a 19-year-old amateur marathon runner. I'd been a part of a running club for the past 5 years that met twice a week. And during that time, I became quite close to 2 of the runners there. They were both much older than me, but we got on well. Leo was a middle-aged bachelor, and Charlotte was a mom of 2 and had been married for more than 20 years. They both worked together in the same trading company, and I can't really explain it, but we all just clicked. We always ran together, but one morning, Leo didn't turn up. That was odd because he never missed a session. Anyway, Charlotte and I ran together, and that night I received a message from Leo asking if I wanted to have dinner with him. I was a bit surprised, but this was Leo's first time inviting me to a private meal. But I still said yes, and we went to a restaurant downtown. At dinner, we got into some deep conversations, and at one point I asked him, "Why have you stayed single till now?" He stopped a bit and replied to me, it's hard to say, but I've just had a bad breakup a few years ago, and I wasn't ready to get into another relationship." Oh, that's why he decided to stay single, even though he's a pretty successful and attractive man. It was quite awkward after that. So I broke the silence by asking him why he hadn't come running that morning, and he just said something had come up at work. He was acting a little strange, but I didn't push it. Anyway, it was a nice dinner, and afterwards we shared a cab home, as we lived on the same street. Well, that's when something weird happened. Charlotte was waiting on his doorstep. Leo looked shocked to see her there and quickly ran out to check what was wrong. Charlotte hadn't seen me, so I wound the window down and happily waved to her, but to my complete surprise, she looked kinda annoyed. Then she just said they had work to do, and she hoped I got home safely. I didn't give it much thought, but in hindsight, what kind of work project needs to be done at 10 p.m.? Anyway, I didn't give it much thought. Surely there couldn't have been anything going on, right? I mean, Charlotte and Leo are colleagues and also close friends. And I'd met Charlotte's family. Sure, her husband was away for work a lot, but they loved each other. And they had kids together. I got home and chilled for a bit. Then about an hour later, I received a text from Leo asking if I'd like to join him for a midnight run. I immediately said yes. Well, to be honest, deep down, I totally had a bit of a crush on him. Even though I knew my parents would freak if they ever found out I was hanging out with the guy old enough to be my dad. It excites me, though. So I went for a run along the beach with him. And afterwards, we got some takeaway food and sat on the sand, listening to the waves and watching the stars. I guess we were both high off adrenaline, and also it was such a romantic setting with all the city lights reflected on the water. So we got into a really deep conversation about relationships and what we want from love. Then one thing led to another, and we started kissing. We ended up spending the whole night on the beach and even watched the sunrise. When I got home, I couldn't stop smiling. But then I saw I had 5 missed calls from Charlotte. I quickly called her back, thinking something must have happened. But when she picked up, she just said, "Where were you last night?" I told her I was on a run, and she said, "With who?" So I said, "With Leo? Why?" And she just said, "Oh, I was just curious. He wasn't answering my calls." Then we hung up. How strange, I thought. Anyway, that night, Leo asked me if I wanted to have dinner together again. And of course I said yes. I was dying to know if last night had just been a one-night makeout sesh, or if it could mean something more. When I saw him, I said to him, "Leo, sorry about last night. I got carried away, and I'm like half your age. I shouldn't have done that." Oh, I don't know what I was thinking. I expected him to say it was okay, and that he enjoyed it like I did. But instead, he said, "Yeah, let's just pretend that nothing happened." I felt so awkward after that, but I couldn't deny my feelings for him. After that, we got even closer, though. We spent more time together and spoke on the phone every night for hours. Then one night, Charlotte called me and said she'd had a fight with Leo and that's why she'd gone to his place the week before. Now it all made sense. So that's why they hadn't been coming to the running club together. She said they still hadn't made up, and she needed someone to talk to. She sounded upset, but wouldn't tell me what the fight was about. Then she asked if we could meet up, although it was quite awkward. I had to tell her I was actually going to the theater with Leo. Leo and I both love going to the theater, and that night we had tickets to see Shakespeare in the park. She asked why we hadn't invited her to join, and I said she could totally join us, but obviously it was too late to get tickets. Then she just hung up. Next days, I realized that Charlotte and Leo would only attend alternate running sessions so that they could avoid each other. I talked to both Leo and Charlotte about it, but they simply claimed that their work was getting stressful and hence they could only handle one training session a week. Then one Friday morning, I noticed Charlotte was in a seriously foul mood. Normally she was so upbeat, so I asked her what was up, and that's when she told me. She'd been having an affair with Leo for the past 3 years. I was shook. I mean, I guess I should have seen it coming, but I still couldn't hide my shock. I'd thought of her as such a role model, with this amazing family and a great job. And yet, here she was, nothing but a cheat. And with Leo, the guy I was seeing. Oh my God, what kind of mess had I got involved in? Charlotte begged me to keep it a secret, but I couldn't even speak. I was in complete denial. If she knew what Leo and I had been up to, and yet, why did it matter? She was the one having an affair, not me. I continued to see Leo, and one time he even invited me over to watch a movie at his place, and we made out again. It was amazing. But at the same time, I had Charlotte calling me every night for moral support, which made things really weird. For the next month or so, Leo and I kept meeting up, and I loved it. But I knew that if Charlotte found out, she'd kill me. It was such a dilemma. Then one night, she called me and said, "If you're my friend, Juliana, you'll stop seeing Leo. Please, I'm begging you." I couldn't believe it. How did she know? Sorry, Charlotte. How did you find out? She said it was a woman's sixth sense, and that she'd known ever since the night when I'd been in the cab with him. Plus, she said it was obvious that I'd had a crush on him for a while. All right, but why do you care if I'm still with Leo? You're married. He's single. He can do whatever he wants, I said to her. Then she said, "Please, for my sanity, please stop seeing him. I'm jealous, okay? It hurts to know you're together. Plus, he's not a good guy." Well, that did it. I wasn't going to break the sisters before misters rule, so I stopped seeing Leo. I couldn't hurt Charlotte like that, even though she was actually the one hurting her whole family by having this affair. Not seeing Leo made me miss him so much, but I told myself I had to keep my word to Charlotte. And yet, you won't believe what happened next. Charlotte started seeing Leo again. I was so angry. She'd asked me to stop seeing him and had even said he wasn't a good guy. All so she could have him to herself again? What kind of married woman does that? Honestly, I was raging. One morning after running, I marched over to her and said, "Do you not have any self-respect? What about your poor husband?" Charlotte went bright red and said, "I'm trying my best. I know you're right, and I should respect myself and my husband more. You know what? From now on, I will keep my distance from Leo, just like you. Trust me." Okay, so at least she had the decency to say that. And I hoped she could do exactly what she said. After that, I decided to take a break out of this complicated 3-person relationship and tried to forget about Leo. I avoided him at the running club, and he avoided me too. Charlotte told me she'd spoken to him about dating me and how inappropriate it was for him to date someone as young as me. So maybe that's why the feeling was mutual. And he avoided me too. After all, it's better that way. He was way too old for me anyway. Plus, I was heading off to university. So it was all for the best. About Charlotte, after I confronted her, we actually became closer. And even now that I'm at university, she still calls me sometimes to ask how I'm doing. I asked her about Leo, and you won't believe it, but apparently Leo is now dating someone. Okay, I guess that's better for everyone. Although I sometimes wonder, if they break up, will he start up his affair with Charlotte again? Well, it's a story about my ebullient youth, when I got into so much trouble just because I fell in love with a middle-aged man. That whole period of my life was such a weird and messy time, right? But now I'm so glad I've met a nice guy my own age. And of course, I never want to get involved in being a third wheel ever again.
It was just a regular school day, and I was sorting out my locker when suddenly I heard hushed whispers and noticed that everyone else was staring at something. Okay, so turns out it wasn't a something, but a someone, as this pretty girl strutted down the corridor like it was a runway or something. Ugh. Why was everyone gawping at her, rushing over to greet her, and sticking notepads in her face for her to sign? I hugged my books and muttered, geez, there's nothing special about her. So, my name's Lily, and I'm just a normal girl. My family, yeah, they're normal. My appearance, normal. And my social status, well, that's just normal too. I coast through life, and that's it. Nothing exciting ever happens to a regular girl like me. Oh, how I long to be the perfect looking girls on Instagram. They're so flawless in their clear skin, stylish clothes, and glossy hair. But those girls were different. They were from different worlds. Oh well, at least I still had my books, my bestie Sarah, and my cute boyfriend Brian. But this all changed when Stacy rocked up at school with her perfect looks and her I'm so sweet and friendly routine. Yeah, right. So, what if she had a prettyish face and a bit part in some TV show? Underneath the fake shine, she was clearly not all that. I walked into English class to see her sitting at the desk next to mine. Ugh, great. I couldn't even get to my seat because everyone else was surrounding her, asking her dumb questions such as, what shampoo do you use? And do you get snack breaks when you film your show? Geez, give me a break instead. Then, when I finally managed to sit down, she smiled at me and in this sickly sweet voice said, hi, I hope it's okay I sit here. I'm Stacy. Yeah, sure. I forced a smile back, but on the inside, my anger was boiling over. Who did this girl think she was? So what if she was beautiful? I bet she only cared about her looks and never bothered studying. Yeah, everyone else would soon realize what a failure she was. Then, one time during recess, Stacy, the living Barbie doll, suggested we start a yearbook, and now everyone's treating her like she's achieved world peace or something. Ugh! You know the worst part of it? I've been saying we should start a yearbook for years, but no one listened to me. And guess who received so many welcome cards and love notes that they fell out of her locker and obstructed the hallway? Yup, Stacy. Gosh! It's been like weeks already. When will these stop? I hated how she thanked everyone and blushed and I needed to be around a sane person who didn't think the sun shone out of her. She was everywhere. It made me sick. But thank God for lunchtime. It became the only peaceful time of the day for me, when I could hang out with Sarah and not have to worry about Stacy. But, what was this? What was that Barbie doll doing sitting at our table and talking to my best friend? I walked over there and placed my tray down next to Sarah. Oh, hi, Lily. Stacy just said the funniest thing. Great, I muttered under my breath. Lunch was an ordeal. Sarah ignored me and kept on asking Stacy dumb questions like, is your co-star Kyle as handsome in real life? And how do you style printed skirts with a colored tee? Yawn! Later that day, due to a paint spillage in art, I was 5 minutes late out. Sarah had agreed to drive me home, but I went out to the parking lot. Her car wasn't there. Then I checked my phone and saw that she'd messaged me. Where are you? I can't wait anymore. I'll leave first with Stacy. See you tomorrow, X. What? Is she ditching me to give that phony a ride? We had been friends since childhood. How could she be fooled for Stacy's act and just throw away our friendship like that? Angry, I messaged her back, you abandoned me for Little Miss Popular? How could you? I get it. New one in, old one out. Well, thanks a lot. My phone buzzed with her reply. Lily, you know it isn't like that. You live up the road from school while Stacy lives much further away and she needed to get back in time to get ready for her filming schedule. Madder than ever, I quickly typed out my reply. Whatever. ever. It's too bad you'll always be a nobody in her eyes, and she's just using you for a free ride. Then I chucked my phone onto my bed. I'd had enough. Sarah had made her choice, and it was to be friends with that fake over me. Sarah may have fallen into the Stacy trap, but at least I still had Brian, right? One afternoon, I was talking to him out in the schoolyard when Stacy tottered past. Even her try-too-hard walk was annoying. She smiled over my Brian. Then she deliberately tripped up and dropped the books she was holding. I grabbed Brian's arm to stop him from going over, but he shook himself free from my grip and went over to her anyway. I watched him help her pick her books up, and then she blushed and squeaked out a "thank you." She was the worst. When he walked back over to me with this big grin on his face, I couldn't take it anymore. So I blurted out to him, "How dare you leave me to help her?" He gave me a confused look.
"Lily, I was just helping her out."
"Yeah, right. You knew she dropped them on purpose to get your attention, but you went over there to her anyway because you think she's prettier than me." He sighed.
"You're being ridiculous. You know what? I can't deal with your selfish, jealous streak anymore. Let's just call it a day. We're done."
Then he walked off. I stood there watching him, expecting him to cool down and come back. Only he didn't. This was all Stacy's fault. She'd stolen my best friend and my boyfriend. No more. It was time to show her that she wasn't so perfect after all. I scrolled through her social media pages for ideas, and it soon became apparent that she loves boys with toned abs who ride motorbikes. How predictable. I discovered this website where I could hire a boy to play with her heart, then ditch her. It's about time she learned how much it sucked to be undesirable and worthless. Ha! I found the perfect guy called Josh. He was 19, a gym addict, and he had a motorbike. Whoa, he was expensive, but it would be worth it, right? I arranged to meet him at the local coffee shop, and geez, he was even more handsome in person. I wished I could use this money to actually make him mine. Sigh. So the deal is, he's gonna flirt with Stacy, make her love him deeply, and then break up with her. The next Monday, I walked out of school to see Josh parked up to the school gate, holding his helmet and looking like he belonged in a movie. Naturally, every girl was staring at him, but he made a beeline for Stacy. Then, just 1 week later, I saw him picking up Stacy from the school. Whoa! I knew that! I knew I had chosen the right person. Josh was such a lady killer. They looked super close, and I had to remind myself that he was just an actor and he was doing his job. Ha! She was gonna be so heartbroken. But a few weeks later, and he was still picking her up. Huh? Why hadn't he broken up with her yet? So I called him up and asked him what was taking him so long. He replied that he would do it soon. He was just making her fall for him more before he did it. Brutal. Only the weeks passed by and he still hadn't ended it. Then I was walking past the movie theater and I spotted them there, kissing. What? This was not the plan! Furious, I had arranged to meet him the next day at the coffee shop. He walked over and couldn't even meet my eye as he said,
"I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I will refund you as soon as I can."
Why? Have you fallen in love with her or something? I said jokingly. There was a long silence. Then he looked down at the table and muttered out,
"Yeah, I have."
Why was I the only one on the planet who saw how fake she was? Thanks to her siren ways, I lost my best friend, my boyfriend, and now my savings. This was it. I needed to confront her. The next day at school, I tried finding her, but she was nowhere to be found. Then, as I passed through the school garden, I saw her sitting there. Gotcha! It's time to tell her exactly what I thought of her. I stormed over to her and opened my mouth to speak, but why was she crying? When she saw me, she managed to smile and said, "Oh, hi, Lily. Is there a chance you could help me?" I stared at her with disbelief. Did she think I was under her spell and would do her bidding? But then I saw what she was crying about. In her hands was her English essay with a big F on it. So I replied, why me? "You're so smart. You answer all the questions in class correctly. I don't want to be judged on my bad grades. That's why I left my last school. The other kids call me a brainless beauty. I moved here for a fresh start, and now I'm still failing." Okay, so in that moment, I realized that there were things I was good at. My grades were good, and I was pretty great at remembering facts. I'd just been so blinded by jealousy that I lost focus on these things and only saw what I didn't have. None of this was Stacy's fault. She never actually done anything bad to me. I'd made it all up in my head because I was jealous of her. So I sat down next to her and said, "No one's gonna call you that because I'll help you study." "You will?" She gave me a hopeful smile and I nodded. "Thank you so much," she flung her arms around me. So that's how Stacy went from being my enemy to my friend. She's actually a really sweet and kind-hearted girl. No wonder why everyone admired her so much. And I was wrong to judge her on her appearance and not give her a fair chance. She's still with Josh and she doesn't know that I hired him to break her heart. But hey, she now has a hunky boyfriend who adores her, so that could be considered compensation, right? Brian and I are still over, but thinking about it, maybe this was for the best. I know I overreacted, but he gave me up so easily. And well, I want to find a guy who won't do that. As for Sarah, I went around to her house with a bag full of her favorite candy, and I apologized for being a jealous jerk. Luckily for me, she forgave me. Now, Sarah, Stacy, and I have become good friends. Sarah and I both help Stacy with her studies, and she gives us fashion tips. And you know what? I've come to realize that I'm pretty after all. I just needed to discover my spark. So finally, I learned that no one's perfect. Perfection is just an illusion. The most important thing is that we feel happy with what we own and never stop improving ourselves. So just be you and let everyone else concentrate on being them.
"Hey, Alex." I felt someone tap on my shoulder. I turned around to see who it was and, it was Roxy, my crush, who also happened to be the most beautiful girl in the world. I figured I must have been in her way, so I quickly mumbled out, "Sorry," and stepped aside. But out of my surprise, she smiled at me and said, "So, a little birdie told me you like me? You know, I think it's cute you haven't made a move on me yet, not like most of the guys around here." I stared at her open-mouthed. Was I dreaming? I pinched myself to check. Nope, this was real. So I nodded my head and muttered out, yeah? "My friend's having a party at their frat house on Wednesday. You want to come?" Before I could reply, her friend Luke appeared, and grinning, he said, "Yeah, you just gotta come to this party." Roxy hit his arm while giving him a dirty look, then smiled at me. "So it's at number 19, starts at 9 p.m. I'll see you then?" I nodded in response, and she said, "Great, see you there." Then she winked at me before she walked off. So yeah, I'm Alex, your average second-year college student. And this is the story about how my crush tried to lure me into a seriously sinister trap. I guess I'm a normal guy. I'm not as rich and popular as the kids from the frat houses are. Instead, my room is in the regular dorms, and although I'm not ugly or unpopular or anything, I'm easily overlooked. So I kept my crush on Roxy a secret because she was way out of my league. She was so beautiful, this was crazy. How did she even find out that I liked her? I couldn't believe that she'd asked me out. This was mad. At first, I felt like the luckiest guy ever. But then as I watched Roxy walk back to her friends, I noticed them giggling, except for this one girl called Sophie. Meanwhile, Luke was making everyone high-five him. He was always a little odd, and he spoke to people in strange ways. Then I caught Sophie's eye, and she gave me a look that said, "Don't." Then she promptly looked away. Her jerky boyfriend Jack had his arm around her shoulder and was tugging on one of her trademark pigtails as he glugged back his drink. I had no idea what she saw in him. But what had her look been about? Back in my dorm, I discussed it with my roommate Ben, and he said it sounded like a setup. As much as I wanted it to be legit, my gut instinct was also saying that it was too good to be true. So the night of the party, I decided to take a look out my dorm window, as it's in the perfect location to get a clear view of the frat houses. I counted the houses down to number 19. Then I took out my binoculars, for which I used for field research studies, to take a closer look. The house had a large rainbow pride flag hanging from the two windows. This made me wonder why Roxy would want to go to a gay party. I saw a lot of feminine-dressed men, and the only two girls that I could spot were far from attractive. And it seemed like they were a couple. And then there was Luke in the front yard holding 2 drinks and looking around like he was waiting for someone. Where was Roxy? I decided to check her social media to see if she'd posted anything. And I noticed she'd left her location open. She was in a nightclub, Diego's. That was strange. So I gave the party a miss, and instead Ben and I went to a student bar. I told him about it, and he said it sounded like I dodged a bullet. The next day I was sitting with Ben and some of my other friends in the canteen when Roxy stormed over to me and yelled out, "How dare you stand me up? Who do you think you are?" Luke appeared and said, "Yeah, why not show?" I just shrugged and said, "Roxy, I know you weren't there. Your phone location's public. You were at Diego's." She hesitated, then said, Yeah, my friend borrowed my phone. But what you did was so creepy, you stalker." As if. Roxy was never without her phone, so I wasn't buying her story. This whole thing didn't make any sense, so I sort of mouthed out, "Whatever, Roxy," then carried on eating my lunch. After that, she started making my life a living hell. She told everyone that I was stalking her, so random students started coming up to me and telling me to leave her alone. Then someone covered the dorm corridors in leaflets with a picture of my face and the word "stalker" written across them. I knew Roxy was behind it. It was so weird. But Luke was worse. One time after class, he sneaked up on me, grabbed my arm, and said, "Hey Alex, why you bail on my party?" I told him that I saw the party from a distance and it wasn't my thing, so he replied, "Hey, you got a probs with me being gay?" I shook my head and told him I didn't, but he still wouldn't let go of my arm. I was relieved when he finally let go of me, and I hurried back to my dorm. On the way, I spotted Sophie sitting outside on the shared bathroom. Hang on, why was she in a flood of tears? I asked her if she was okay, but she told me to go away. Although I didn't want to put my nose where it shouldn't be. But I wasn't heartless, so I left her my bottle of water before I walked off. I said, "If you want to talk about it, I'm here for you." I was unlocking my dorm room when I heard someone cough behind me. I turned around to see Sophie standing there. She thanked me for the water and she said she wanted to talk. I led her into my room and she sat on my bed. And staring at her feet, she said in tears, "I caught Jack and Roxy by the locker rooms, but when I confronted them about it, they just shooed me away." I sat down next to Sophie and hugged her. This was horrible. It looks like I've been so wrong about Roxy. She wasn't my dream girl at all. Instead, she was a nightmare. Sophie continued, "It gets worse. Roxy stole my assignment and submitted it as her own. It's due tomorrow and I don't have the time to write a new one." She started crying again. I passed her a tissue and said, "We'll sort this out. There's no way she's getting away with it. That's horrible." So I told her to send an email to the college dean and to her course tutor explaining what happened. She'd attached the original assignment and all the notes she'd written about it. They both got back to us within minutes and said that they would look into this. Sophie looked so delighted, but then suddenly her smile dropped, and she fiddled with one of her pigtails as she said, "Alex, there's something I need to tell you. Please don't hate me." Then she told me how the party Roxy had invited me to had been a trap. Roxy found out I had a crush on her, and she was embarrassed that an average guy like me dared to have feelings toward her. And she was adamant she needed to teach me a lesson. So that's when Luke said he would help, as he wanted to add me to his collection, so they hatched a plan. Roxy invited me to the party, and Luke was waiting for me with a spiked drink. Apparently, this was Roxy's way of silencing me, and making sure I didn't look at her in the same way ever again. Whoa, this was so dark. I shivered at the thought of what could have been. It was terrifying. Sophie also told me that she begged Roxy not to do this, but she got her friends to hold her down. Then she told her that if she intervened, they'd make her suffer. I comforted Sophie and told her that it wasn't her fault. I knew I couldn't just stay quiet on this, as they could do this to some poor other guy who dared to have a crush on her. So with Sophie's help, we wrote a letter to the dean and to the college security about what had happened. This wasn't going to be taken lying down. Sophie was terrified that Roxy and her friends would come after her, so I invited her back to my hometown for the weekend to get away from everyone and let things cool down. When we arrived back at college, news spread that Roxy had been expelled for stealing another student's work. As for Luke, the cops raided his frat house and found loads of banned substances hidden in there. It was so serious that it went to court, and they ended up in jail. As for Jack, he tried to guilt-trip Sophie as to why she should get Roxy expelled for dumb reasons, but she stopped talking to him anyway. I often think back to the night of the party and what could have been. My life would have been ruined, and what for? All because I dared to have a crush on a beautiful girl. I say good riddance. Some good has come out of this whole mess. Sophie and I grew closer and started dating. Now we've both graduated, and that's not all. We have 2 amazing kids together. I love my beautiful family with all my heart, and I just want to protect them from all the bad in this world. So in short, I don't think that just because you're beautiful, rich, and popular, that you get away with doing whatever you please. Regardless of age, sex, looks, and so on, everyone deserves to be treated with respect and compassion.
Hey, Daisy here. I'm just your normal 19-year-old college girl living away from home for the first time. And can't deny that it could get lonely sometimes, and I felt homesick a lot. But it's okay though, as I have Lucas, my loving boyfriend. Okay, yeah, his family is well off, so he always treats me to nice places and buys me nice gifts. A few months ago, he told me to move in with him in his family's mansion. And I've agreed. But don't get me wrong, I'm not a gold digger at all. I just had no other choice. It all started one night when thieves broke into my apartment while I was asleep. It was terrifying. I knew they were ransacking my living room and stealing my TV and laptop, but I'd rather stay put to protect myself. After that, I didn't want to be home alone at all anymore. Lucas, too, was worried for me, so one evening he told me, "Daisy, I think you should come live with me, at least until you find a roommate." Wow. I wasn't expecting that, but I guess it made sense. I felt a bit awkward about it, though, as I've only been to his house, or should I say his parents' mansion, a few times. And although there was plenty of space, and his parents adored me, but I didn't want to feel like I was intruding. Sensing my apprehension, he continued, "I've explained the situation to my parents, and they're cool with it." I smiled at him and replied, "Well, okay then, but it will just be temporary." Before I moved in with Lucas and his family, I felt very anxious. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to adapt to their lifestyle, and I didn't want to upset his parents. I worried a lot, but not once did I think my trouble would be with the maid. Yep, you heard me right. On my first day at the mansion, a cheerful woman immediately ran towards me and greeted me. Mrs. Harris introduced her to me. "This is our maid, Sarah. She's been with us for years, so if you have any problem, just ask her. We're all family here. Make yourself comfortable." Then Sarah quickly grabbed my suitcase and smiled at me. "Miss, let me help you with that. I'll show you to the room." It was so strange having someone else do stuff for me like this. I could just smile back and follow her upstairs. That made me feel so welcomed here, and how nice this maid was. Maybe we could be friends. But suddenly, a thump cuts off my thoughts. It was Sarah. She'd thrown my suitcase to the floor, then said, "What on earth do you have in there? Carry it yourself. Your room is down the hallway to the left." And she walked off. What was that? Did I do something wrong? I quickly picked up my stuff in confusion. I didn't want to make an enemy of anyone here, especially not on my first day. So after I unpacked my stuff, I went down to the kitchen to help her prepare dinner. She was still so grumpy at me and told me to just get lost as I'd only be in her way. I remained persistent as I really wanted to resolve whatever her misunderstandings about me were. Eventually, she gave in and said, "Fine, you want to help? Go dice up all of those onions." "Yes, sure, but all of these?" I asked her while staring at a basket full of onions. "Are you going to help me or not?" she said sharply. I replied, Okay, don't worry, I'll do it." I tried starting up a convo with her, but she just rolled her eyes at me. Meanwhile, the onions were giving me hell. My eyes were burning and tears were streaming out. Ouch! When I finally finished, she stared at my swollen eyes and said, "If you're that upset about living here, you could just leave." "It's the onions," I told her. She smirked as she took them off me, then walked straight to the trash and threw them away, saying, "You took too long. I didn't need it anymore." What? My face dropped, but I was far too exhausted to argue with her anyway. That's when Lucas and his parents came down for dinner. Sarah quickly set up the tables, then called me over with a bright smile as she pulled out a chair for me. "Miss Campbell, please take a seat. Dinner is ready." Was she for real? I couldn't keep up with her constant change in personality. After dinner, I approached Sarah while she was doing the dishes. "Look, I'm sorry, but did I do something to upset you?" "Yes, you sure did. You waltz around like you own the place, but you're nothing more than a parasite. And I won't let you worm your way into my home." Before I had time to process her words, she grabbed an expensive-looking marble plate and smirked at me as she dropped it onto the ground. Then, with a piece of broken plate, she quickly slit her hand and yelled out loud, "Miss, I'm so sorry for vexing you, but you shouldn't have broken this. It's Mr. Harris's favorite plate." Hearing the crashing sound, everyone quickly gathered in the kitchen and stared at me for answers. I immediately explained, "No, it's not like that." But Mrs. Harris said, "It's okay. Let's help Sarah first." Then she led her off to get the first aid kit. I grabbed Lucas's arm. "Babe, I really didn't do that." He reassured me with a smile. "Daisy, don't worry about it." "You don't understand. Sarah did it on purpose and blamed me." He laughed as if he'd just heard something ridiculous, then said, "No way! I bet it was just some sort of misunderstanding. Sarah is really nice. Don't worry, you two will get close in no time. Now let me clean up this mess. You go and relax." I felt frustrated and fed up, but I reluctantly went back to my room. This girl was definitely onto me. But for what reason? Over the following weeks, her vendetta against me continued. She washed my white clothes with colored ones, then intentionally threw away my stuff and made out she mistook it for trash while cleaning my room. She put extra hot chili flakes in my food, then rushed over with a glass of water when I started to choke, and so on. Worse still, Lucas and his parents wouldn't hear a bad word said against her. They were completely oblivious to how crazy she was. I didn't understand why she hated me so much. Was she jealous of me or something? All right then. If she wanted to play with me, then game on. So I decided to spy on her to catch her red-handed and show everyone her true self. My chance to expose her finally arrived. I was passing her room and I saw her holding a watch. I recognized it. It was Mr. Harris's. She looked shifty as she placed it into her drawer and hid it underneath some of her clothes. Aha! Got her! I quickly ran to the garden to find Mrs. Harris and managed to persuade her to come with me to Sarah's room. Sarah stood by looking all innocent as Mrs. Harris checked her drawer, but the watch wasn't there, and instead we found it still intact on the vanity in the master bedroom. Huh? At that moment, Sarah suddenly bawled out, "Ma'am, I would never steal from you. You know that. I've gone out of my way to please Miss Campbell here, but she's intent on making my life a misery." Oh my God. Those crocodile tears. Did she have no shame? I tried explaining myself to Mrs. Harris, but she held up her hand and told me she didn't want to hear it. I wanted to make amends, so the next morning, I prepared Mrs. Harris's favorite smoothie and breakfast for her. I set it up nicely on the dining table, then went upstairs to get her, smirking at Sarah as she passed by. Mrs. Harris seemed happy with the gesture, but just an hour later, she said she didn't feel well. She was clutching her stomach as she glared at me and blamed me for poisoning her food. What? How frustrating! And Lucas wasn't even home for me to talk to. So I went to the kitchen to check the expiration date of everything I'd used. But I swear it was all fresh. I even went through the trash to check the used milk carton. That's when I saw some sesame seeds in there. That's odd, as I knew Mrs. Harris was allergic to them, so we never had them in the house. It had to be Sarah. She must have poisoned the breakfast with them when I was out of the room. Later that day, Mrs. Harris was feeling better, so I went to see her and told her that I was leaving, on one condition. Then I persuaded her to come into my room and hide in my closet. By this point, I think she was willing to do anything just to get me out of her house. Then I called Sarah over to help me pack up my stuff. She stepped into my room with a cocky smile and knocked over the box of my stuff, then said, "I was always going to win." I replied, "Fine, you win. But before I leave, I want to ask you something. You put sesame seeds in the breakfast I made for Mrs. Harris, didn't you?" Sarah looked around to check no one else was about before she grinned at me and said, "Yes, it was me, all me. While you were sucking up to Mrs. Harris, I ground some up and mixed them into the disgusting smoothie you made. Oh, I also pretended to steal the watch because I knew you were spying on me. Geez, you made it so easy." "But why?" I asked. "But why?" She imitated my voice. "Because this is my family. I've lived here for years. You can't just show up all pretty and carefree and expect to have everything and push me out of my own home. I never wanted to push you out. All I wanted was to be your friend." As if. This is my gold mine, not yours. Sooner or later, all of this will be mine, and God knows I deserve it. I've put up with this annoying family and a poor salary for years. Mr. Harris always dreamed of having a daughter, but no, he's stuck with that dumb son of his. It's only a matter of time until he realizes I can be the daughter he longed for. Or, now that you won't be around, it'll be easy for me to trap Lucas by having his baby. Either way, the winner is always me. Suddenly, the wardrobe doors burst open and out emerged Mrs. Harris looking furious. She pulled Sarah's hair and dragged her out of the room. Wow, who knew the mild-mannered Mrs. Harris could be so kick-ass? I guess everyone has a hidden side. Anyway, this proved my innocence and Sarah was kicked out right on the spot. Then Mrs. Harris apologized to me and insisted that I should keep staying with them. I thanked her for the offer but politely declined. As I felt ready to leave and move in with my friend, I was just relieved that she'd learned the truth and that Sarah had gone once and for all. So, Lucas and I are still together and are very happy. Yes, it was annoying he didn't believe me at first, but he's such a sweet and trusting guy that he'd never expect someone could be capable of such horrible things. But hey, that's just one of the many reasons why I love him. As for his parents, well, I still visit them sometimes. I even cook for them now and then, but thankfully, there have been no more sesame seed incidents, and there's no more crazy maid to contend with. Phew!
My phone beeped with a new message. Emma, I've got something to do nearby, so let's meet there. See ya. It was from Tony, my childhood friend from the orphanage back in Missouri. Yep, that's right. I ended up in an orphanage after my mom passed away when I was only 4 years old. But things were even worse for Tony and him. They'd been left outside the orphanage door without anyone even knowing who their parents were. And now here I am, on my way to visit his grave, as today's his death anniversary. Time flies. I can hardly believe it's been 10 years already. I picked up some flowers, then drove to the cemetery. Tony was already there waiting for me. I smiled and waved, but my heart felt heavy. Back when we were 14, we'd been joined at the hip, Tony, Thomas, and me. I had a secret crush on Thomas, but I never got the chance to tell him. It had all happened so fast on that day. We were just kids, young and dumb. We'd snuck out to go play by the riverbank. One minute we were splashing each other in the river. The next moment, Thomas was being carried away in the current. I tried to save him, but Tony pulled me back to shore. Even thinking about it now, I still couldn't help but burst into tears. Don't cry, Em. I'll always be here for you. And I knew he would be. Deep down, I knew Tony always had feelings for me. But I didn't feel the same way. After that, Tony drove me home. Seeing my exhausted look, he said before I went inside, "Get a good night's sleep, Em. Remember, we've got that interview tomorrow." Gosh, I almost forgot. Tony probably thought I was the worst employee ever. And yes, you can guess it. Tony is my boss. After years in the orphanage, he was adopted by a super smart family that had inspired him to strive to become someone important, and he'd eventually built a food startup. Anyway, the following morning, despite still feeling worn out, I had no choice but to put on a brave face to go to work, as I had a marketing team to lead. But as I walked into the lobby, a guy bumped into me. He helped me up and frantically apologized, explaining he was in a rush. I looked up and was about to nag him, but wait, why does he look so familiar? In fact, he looked exactly like... It's you! You... I stammered, but I couldn't even finish my sentences because he'd rushed into the lift and the doors had closed. I must have been seeing things. Honestly, throughout the whole interview, I could barely concentrate. Could there be two people looking that similar on this earth? I was lost in thought when the next applicant came in, and it was him. Both Tony and I stared in shock. He was the spitting image of Thomas. But he couldn't be. I mean, Thomas had died years ago. We both were too stunned to say anything until his voice broke the silence. "Hi, I'm Dustin, and I'm here to interview for the marketing position." I looked at Tony, and he looked just as confused as I did. But yeah, it wasn't Thomas. This guy was from Illinois and had never even been to Missouri. Okay, so here's Thomas's doppelganger. Fair enough. The interview went well, and even though he was a bit arrogant, he knew what he was doing, so we hired him. When I left the room, Surprisingly, Dustin was still waiting for me outside. He offered to treat me to lunch as an apology for earlier. I agreed, as I was desperate to ask him more questions. During lunch, I kept mentioning the orphanage, some of Thomas's hobbies and things he hated, but Dustin didn't even bat an eyelid. I was disappointed, because I really hoped Dustin would actually be Thomas. That night, I barely slept. I couldn't stop thinking about Dustin. It's ridiculous, but I still had a strong feeling that he really was my childhood sweetheart. Suddenly, I got a message from Tony.
Saw you hanging out with Dustin. Wake up, Em. He's not Thomas.
Ugh, I didn't need to hear that. The next day, I couldn't take my eyes off of Dustin. At lunch, I watched as he put honey on his watermelon, and I almost freaked out. That was exactly what Thomas used to do. Oh my, I blurted out. I then told Tony what I just saw as soon as he sat down, but he just laughed and said,
Honestly, Em, tons of people do that. Do you really think that our Thomas could be that arrogant?
Seeing that I was still unfazed, he continued.
But if you still want to check, just give him a peach. Things can change, but allergies don't, right?
OMG, Tony was a genius. He probably was just kidding, but I was super serious. So the next day, I bought Dustin a peach pie to welcome him to the team. But to my surprise, he ate it up with pleasure and seemed totally fine. Okay, clearly I needed to let this go. He wasn't Thomas. End of. But if only things were that simple. And even though I knew Dustin wasn't Thomas, I still felt attracted to him. He was smart and sweet, and so much fun to be around. Eventually, we started hanging out and became very close. We didn't actually make anything official, but we were low-key dating already. However, it was impossible to hide things from Tony. One time, our company went on a team bonding weekend, and we'd arranged a tennis competition. We had to pair up, so obviously I would go with Dustin, but as we're about to go sign up, then Tony came to ask me to be his partner too. My God, it was so awkward. Then Tony said in a very sulky tone,
Okay, how about we have a little competition? The winner gets to pair up with Emma.
And so they had a swimming race. That's so embarrassing. I knew Dustin couldn't swim, so I started to panic, but he got in the pool anyway. Obviously, Tony won, but who cares? He was acting like a child. I rushed over to help Dustin, who was left coughing and choking on the water, and at that moment, I realized that I was falling for him so much. But since then, there were rumors in the company that Dustin was only flirting with me to get promoted. One morning, we were walking through the lobby together when two girls started whispering about us. So Dustin took my hand and went straight to the girls saying,
I love Emma. What's wrong with that? Tell me. Go on.
At that exact moment, Tony appeared and asked if he could have a word with Dustin in his office. I was so nervous. Now everyone knew we were in some weird triangle, and I didn't like it one bit. Then one of my colleagues overheard Tony telling Dustin that if he didn't leave me alone, he'd be fired. I couldn't believe it. I went to find Tony right away, and before I could even confront him, he said,
Yes, it's true. I asked those girls to start the rumors, and I also asked that jerk to give up on you. It was me. I did it all. I just don't get it, Em. Why have I ever been good enough for you?
Tony, wait.
It's been 10 years. Why couldn't you give me a chance? Why can't you let Thomas go? Some guy who looks like him walks up and you totally forget about me? He's a loser compared to Thomas.
Don't you dare call him a loser, I said.
See? In the end, you still care about him only, not me.
Tony shouted, then stormed off. I hated to be in this situation. On the one hand, I truly liked Dustin, but Tony was not only my lifesaver, but also my best friend, who'd stuck by my side through all the highs and lows. What a dilemma. In the end, I decided to have a little space from Dustin, just until things cooled down. Maybe then the rumors would stop and people would quit being so negative about him. But that wasn't to be so. You see, Our new product that hadn't even been released yet suddenly appeared on the website of our direct competitor. Someone must have leaked the confidential file. But who? An investigation was opened and all of our computers were checked. You won't believe it, but the IT team had been able to recover a deleted email that had been sent to our rivals from Dustin's outbox. Dustin denied it, and he demanded to check the CCTV. That's how we caught Mike, one of our senior employees, at Dustin's computer sneakily doing something. And to think, he'd put the blame on Dustin. After the truth came out, I went over to Dustin, but he seemed mad as he said,
You think I'm a jerk too, don't you? That's why you've been giving me the cold shoulder.
I told him I never believed he'd done it. Then I took his hand. I'm so sorry. It's just that I've been through some stuff. Then we hugged. Oh my, I'd missed him so much. But the drama didn't end there. The info leaked had caused our company huge losses. We had thousands of meetings, and the stress was unreal. Feeling so deflated, I went up to the rooftop to get some air. Suddenly, I heard Dustin's voice somewhere. He was on the phone with someone talking about some plan to steal our company's products. No way! Without even thinking, I charged over and snatched his phone away to see that he was talking to Mike? Oh my God! Had they been accomplices from the beginning? I was so angry, but actually more disappointed. So I asked him to resign and stay away from my sight. I know I should have exposed him to the whole company instead of letting him go that easy, but I guess my heart couldn't bear to do that. I felt so bad, especially towards Tony, the best friend who's always by my side, while I was busy chasing after a jerk. I lost contact with Dustin after that, and I barely had time to think about it because our company was on the brink of bankruptcy. But one day, I got a call from him, followed by a message saying,
Please don't ignore me. I've got something important to tell you.
So we met up the next day at a coffee shop, and as soon as I saw him, I said, Look, Dustin, I've had enough of your lies. Please just get to the point. Then he replied,
Emma, I admit that I only came to work for your company to steal your ideas. But seeing you and Tony after all these years, and falling for you all over again, well, that wasn't part of my plan.
I was confused. After all these years? What are you talking about? Then he showed me his wrist, and he was wearing a friendship bracelet.
Remember this? You gave it to me on my birthday 10 years ago.
OMG. What was going on? I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd given this to Thomas. But then why? But the peach. I continued. He just laughed and said,
I overheard you guys' plan, so I made sure to take allergy meds just before.
Then he went on to explain that he was Thomas, and that he'd been lucky enough to be saved that day on the river. There was a family who were out in the river searching for their drowned son, but instead of finding him, they found Thomas, and so they kindly adopted him and changed his name to their son's, Dustin. This was insane. Here was Thomas right in front of me, after all these years. And guess what? His adoptive father is the director of our rival company, and so he'd asked Dustin, or should I say Thomas, to come and infiltrate our company. Thomas kept apologizing for it, saying how much it had tormented him, and that he just missed me and had to tell me the truth. My head was spinning. This was all too much. I needed a moment to think it all through. But in the end, we decided that he could help our company by uploading a post to expose the truth. Obviously, as soon as Tony heard about it all, he was furious. He was mostly mad at me because I'd covered for Thomas. He'd even stopped talking to me for a while. But putting that aside, after Thomas's post, things got better for our company. We were able to launch new products as scheduled, and he even contributed some capital to help with our new project. Now our companies are still rivals, but at least it's now a fair competition. As for Tony and I, we eventually made up. He came to find me one day after work and said,
I'm so sorry for how childish I've been. I was just jealous of you and Thomas. I was too selfish to consider your feelings. But You and Thomas, I want you guys to be together. You two are made for each other.
I couldn't stop crying as he said that. It meant so much to me. And guess what? It has now been a whole year since Thomas came back into our lives, and the three of us are back to being the best of friends. Oh, and I should probably add that Thomas and I are engaged. We're so happy, and we're even opening an orphanage together for homeless kids like us. I'm going through many phases, but I finally found peace in life. I guess it all worked out after all.
It was just a normal day, a day like any other, and I was jamming to my favorite song as I walked home when suddenly, "May I have your autograph, please? Oh, you're even more handsome in real life. Marry me!" OMG, how annoying. Don't they have anything better to do? So I took a deep breath and then blurted out, "Oh, I'm starving. This weather really got me craving for some tacos. If only..." Predictably, without letting me finish the sentence, they rushed off, and 5 minutes later, the girls returned with enough tacos to feed me for the whole week. I grabbed one, chewed on it with my mouth open, then wiped my mouth, and burped so loud, they gave me disgusted looks and quickly left. And indeed, my Twitter feed that evening, and it didn't disappoint. I saw lots of posts from fans saying I was rude, greedy, and ungrateful. These dumb fans should stop fantasizing about their idols, really. Okay, enough internet for today. Now, I have to review the script for tomorrow's performance. I'm passionate about magic and participate in all the big-name shows in this city and beyond. Every day involves vigorous research into new tricks. Clearly, it's paid off. Hi, I'm Ashton, and my latest magic show was hugely successful. But alas, this isn't me. This is me. And that guy's Jasper, my identical twin brother. And that cute girl is Miranda. She's our schoolmate, but also our assistant. She's the real wind of change to our shows, as well as being the most adorable girl I've ever seen. But I've never had the courage to tell her that. We did a great job today, especially you, Ashton. The script was incredible, and the audience adored it. I don't know how I can ever thank you guys enough. I've learned so much, and I'm having lots of fun working with you both. This was my opportunity to tell Miranda how I feel. I opened my mouth to speak, but then a smiling Jasper came up alongside her, touched her shoulder, and said, "And you too, sweetie. You're so talented and charming, the audience thinks you're amazing, as do I." Miranda smiled back, and then they both started chatting and walking away, leaving me behind. To be honest, we might have been identical in looks, but our personalities were polar opposites. My brother thrives off attention, while I'm kind of shy. When we were little kids, everyone preferred Jasper over me. It didn't matter that our mom dressed us in the same clothes. People always swarmed around Jasper and called him handsome, bright, and smart. But me, well, I may as well have been invisible. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate my brother, but I'm fed up with always being a shadow next to him. See? Even these trophies have Jasper's name on them, not mine. "Hey, Ashton, I got this for you a few days ago, but I forgot. Have fun." I smiled wryly and mumbled back, "Thank you," but honestly, inside I felt terrible. I was the mastermind behind our performances, not him. I wrote the scripts, created the tricks, and even designed our costumes. But why did he get all the glory out of it, and even became an internet sensation while no one took me seriously? Oh, I forgot to tell you. The fans yesterday were Jasper's, not mine. I'm always being mistaken for him. So yesterday I decided to have some fun and play a small trick on him. It was funny because Jasper was completely bewildered about where this scandal had come from. Ha! Again, Jasper's fans thought my account was his private one, so they bombarded me with messages full of tasteless nonsense. "Jasper, I love you so much. Jasper, I'll sue you for stealing my heart. Have you seen my boyfriend? He's reading this text right now and his name is Jasper." Ugh. I was about to turn off the phone and go back to bed when suddenly I spotted Jasper commenting on Miranda's new post, and they just kept replying back and forth. Ugh, these fangirls already made me feel so sick. They see a charming-ish, good-looking guy, and they act like a magpie who spotted a shiny thing. And now even Miranda seems to be smitten with him. Okay, fine. I'll show you how manly or handsome and flashy Jasper is. No, your eyes aren't deceiving you. It's still me. But I'm wearing my bro's clothes and have styled my hair just like his. Now, let's have some fun. First off, our Jasper needs some makeup. Now let's look the part As planned, it wasn't long before people started recognizing me and started videoing. So I deliberately gave a horrified yelp and ran away. As expected, those videos were soon passed around on social media, and the comments were coming non-stop. Hey, some YouTubers even made reaction videos to that. Oh man, this is so hilarious. I was laughing so much my stomach ached. Suddenly, Jasper stormed into my room. He didn't even knock, and he looked all serious. Hey, what's this? Our class was gonna have a costume party, remember? And I decided to go disguised as a girl. Okay, but why wear my clothes and style your hair like mine? Chill out, bro. I must have grabbed yours by accident. We used to wear the same things all the time when we were younger anyway. Don't be so touchy. As for the hair, I was just trying something new. He gave me a suspicious look, sighed, then he left. The next day, I thought the whole school would be bad-mouthing Jasper about the videos. But to the contrary. The fangirls even considered it cute and inspiring, as he's breaking gender norms. I'm speechless. Whatever. Their reactions didn't matter. The only important thing was what my muse Miranda thought about all this. Nice dress, can I borrow it sometime? Oh, that was the preparation for the upcoming costume party, LOL. Ooh, no, I mean, it's cute though. Gosh, my plan's now officially a massive fail. I stayed there watching them for a bit, and she just kept on playing with her hair as she gave my brother these gooey-eyed looks. Ugh. Then, to annoy me even further, right in that afternoon, Mr. Wainwright, our principal, came into class, stopped in front of Jasper's desk, and asked him, Jasper, will you please do me the honor of performing on behalf of the school at the town hall launch event next week? Jasper immediately accepted the invitation, and the principal thanked him, then left. What about me? He didn't so much as look my way. You know, I'm the one who creates the content and everything. Jasper's just the one who acts following my script. This is so frustrating. All this unfairness wouldn't have happened if I didn't have glossophobia. Yeah, public speaking scares me out of my wits. So I could just sit there, fist clenched, feeling my anger grow. This sucks. I was backstage with Jasper going over the show itinerary when Jasper blurted out, I want to make a small change. I want to confess my feelings toward Miranda at the end of the show. He pointed to the stage and continued, I'm going to hang a box of flower petals on the ceiling, and during the applause, you'll pull the strings and whoosh! The flower petals will fall down on us as I confess. How's that? Romantic, huh? I was dumbfounded, but still managed to utter, yeah, that sounds good. But my heart was suffocated. There's no way I can let that happen. So I came up with a plan. Since I was the one who's in charge of the props, that day I secretly replaced the box of flower petals at the end of the rope with a bucket of dirty water instead. Didn't that sound much more fun? Then before the show, I pulled Miranda aside and told her, Jasper has a surprise plan for you. You're gonna love it. Once she received this gift, there's no way she'd ever want to see Jasper again. Ha! I couldn't wait. After the show ended and the crowd applauded, I waited for the signal wink from Jasper. Then I pulled the strings and watched on. Oh no! Technical error! The rope holding the bucket had jammed, and now the whole bucket was falling. Jasper dived forward and knocked Miranda out of the way. The bucket whacked him in the head. He collapsed, and stinky, muddy water went everywhere. The whole venue was in an uproar. Oh my God! What on earth did I just do? Ah! I held my head and shouted. But wait! Why was it so dark? Hey! This is my room, isn't it? I felt so cold, drenched in sweat and shivering. Reached my phone to look at the calendar. I had to pinch myself while my heart was still pounding. Turns out D-Day is yet to come. It's tomorrow. So I was just dreaming? I hadn't really harmed my brother, had I? I rushed into Jasper's room to check. Phew! He was lying there playing on his phone. I felt so bad just because of childish jealousy. I'd almost harmed my own brother. I thought for a moment and then walked over to him to confess everything. Jasper, I'm sorry, but I have to say this. All the scandals recently were done by me, deliberately. The tacos incident and the Walmart one, too. He looked up from his phone and sighed. Why would you do that? Because I like Miranda, too. Huh? Really? I didn't know that. Why didn't you tell me? I was even going to ruin our performance tomorrow. Okay, just scold me or hit me, anything. I deserve it. Jasper clenched his fist and held it up in front of me. I closed my eyes and was ready to take it. But then, to my surprise, he patted me on the shoulder and said calmly, I'm angry. No, furious. But honestly, I'm more disappointed. We're brothers, we're family, you remember. But I'll take the blame too. I suppose I do milk the fame a bit too much sometimes. I know you're the one who comes up with all the killer content, and I suppose I shouldn't have been so open with my feelings towards Miranda. I should have stopped to consider yours. After talking for a while, we finally agreed that after the performance tomorrow, we would text Miranda to confess how we feel toward her. And whoever she accepted, it would be God's will. The performance was outstanding, and we even got to take photos with the mayor and shake his hand. But the most thrilling moment was this. When we got home, Jasper and I sat next to each other and texted Miranda to confess our love. The message popped up on our phones one after another. So, who will win in this game of love? I held my breath and opened the message. Ashton, I feel the same, but please keep it a secret from Jasper. I don't want him to feel awkward. X. I was about to shout out with joy when I saw Jasper looking smug. We looked at each other in bewilderment, and then held the two phones side by side to compare. Oh my gosh. Miranda texted me and Jasper the same message. She just switched our names around. Gosh. So she planned to love us both in secret? All this time, and my so-called muse actually was just some sneaky little snake. Dang. And to think I almost lost my brother over her. She's really not worth it. We were stunned, then we both burst out laughing. And you can guess what we did after, right, of course. We said bye-bye to Miranda and found a new assistant. Hopefully we both won't get hurt feelings for this one. It's true that I used to be sick of being my bro's sidekick, but it's different now. I understand that even though we look the same, we each have our own personalities. That's why there are different things in life that might be suitable for him, but not for me and vice versa. And you know what? I'm proud of that. Besides, I'm working hard to overcome my shyness and put my face in the light. People are finally getting to know me, and though I'm still the guy behind the scenes, I also have a huge fan base now.
Sarah, it's about time you got married. What are you talking about? Get married? Not a chance. I'm still in school. Oh, give me a break. Marrying a rich guy will bring you more money than school ever will. Mom, I'm not like you. I actually like school. Now leave me alone. That was the conversation between my mom and I about 2 months ago. Well, look at me now. Here I am staying in one of the most luxurious villas in Boston. My name's Sarah, by the way, and I'm 16 and in high school. My life hasn't ever been normal. For starters, I don't have a dad, and my mom is totally irresponsible, choosing to spend any money we have on partying and men. Of course, she doesn't even have a job, so we rely on her latest fling to help support us. My mom has never really cared about me, so I just stay out of her life as well. She can do what she wants as long as I can do what I want, and what I want is to study really hard so that I can have a better life than hers. But as usual, she intervened in that plan, and 2 months ago she forced me to quit high school and get married. Obviously, I refused, and I even went on a hunger strike for a few days. But then one day she said, "Tomorrow, our two families will meet. If you don't rock up, I'll go to your school and tell them you're not coming back. But if you come, you can still go to school, at least until the wedding." Ugh, school. She's using what I love most against me, again, to force me to follow all of her ridiculous plans. Fine, I agreed. I mean, it was just a meetup. It's not like they could pressure me to get married right away, right? So the next day, I followed my mom to go meet Adam's family. I was shocked when I saw him. He was wearing a mask that covered half of his face, and he just sat there, not uttering a word, just staring at me without even blinking. Honestly, it was so creepy. His parents seemed nice, though, and they explained that he'd been in an accident when he was a kid, which had left him with a severe burn scar on his face. So he wore the mask to avoid scaring people off. I could see him watching me, waiting for my reaction. So I tried to smile back. I felt so bad for him. But at the same time, there was no way I wanted to spend my life with this guy. So I decided to put my plan into action. All I had to do was get his parents to disagree with the arrangement. So I acted as clumsy as possible. I wanted to give the worst first impression ever. As soon as the wine was poured, I leaned over and knocked his mom's glass all over her white dress. My mom looked mortified, but I didn't stop there. I ate with my hands and dropped food all over the table and kept chewing with my mouth wide open. But no matter how hard I tried, Adam's parents still seemed to like me, and I could see him slightly smirking at me. What did a girl have to do to put this family off? Clearly they were desperate. Near the end of the meal, they started discussing the engagement. Apparently, I'd move into Adam's family house so we could get to know each other. Then, if I could help Adam to feel less insecure, they'd let me finish high school before we had to get married. So didn't that mean they just wanted a friend for Adam? Someone to keep him company? It's not that bad. I guess I can do that then. So after the engagement, I moved into Adam's mansion. After school every day, I'd hang out with him and try to cheer him up. I'd play him my fave music, show him some epic movies, even try telling him jokes. But still, he barely smiled. He wasn't interested in anything I liked. Then one day I was struggling with my science homework when he passed by and decided to check out what I was doing. Suddenly, he started chatting away, and I realized how much he loved chemistry and physics. He even offered to help me with my assignments. He was so passionate about those subjects, and this was a win-win, because I'd finally found something we could discuss. He even started opening up to me. It was a start. I began to feel more comfortable around him. On one sunny day, I even asked Adam if he wanted to play a game of badminton. At first he refused, as he didn't like being outside, but I wouldn't stop begging until he said, "Fine. Have you played this game before?" "No." "Okay, then let me show you." I was so excited to teach Adam. Although I'm not great at hand-eye coordination, I'd been playing badminton a lot at school, so I felt pretty confident. Finally, I'd found something I was better at than him. Okay, so I spoke too soon. After a few missed serves, he somehow mastered the shuttlecock and kicked my ass. Why did you say you've never played this before? 'Cause it's the truth. I don't believe you. Adam just shrugged and then left me lying on the ground. He had to be bluffing. It's impossible for anyone to be that good the first time they do something. Ugh. But it was fun, I guess. Adam was growing on me, but I couldn't be around him 24/7 as I had classes to attend. And no cap, I was extremely happy that I still got to go to school. Plus, at school something incredible happened. One day I was walking through the schoolyard when I tripped over a can. Just as I was about to faceplant on the ground, a hand appeared and pulled me back up. We made eye contact, and I swear it was love at first sight. His name was Brian, and he's super handsome. From that moment on, we texted nonstop every day, and it wasn't long before he asked me to be his girlfriend. And of course I said yes. I was smitten, but I obviously had to hide it from Adam and his parents. One night, I was on the phone with Brian when suddenly a text from my mom arrived. In fact, ever since the engagement, she hadn't even been in touch. Maybe she was too busy spending the huge amount of money that Adam's parents had given her. "Sarah, I really need some cash, just around $500. Can you please ask Adam if he can lend me it?" What? How have you already spent the money his parents gave you? Stop asking questions, just get me that money, okay? Ugh, money, money, money. All she cared about was money. She didn't even ask if I was okay. I want to ask, can you get me some money? Money? For what? I need to pay for my tutoring class. I haven't had money to pay for the past few months. How much do you need? About $500. Okay, I'll tell the butler he'll give it to you later. Phew. That was easier than I thought. But Adam didn't ask twice about it. Was it because that amounts just nothing to a rich guy like him? Anyway, at least he'd said yes. That would shut my mom up for a bit. If only. A few days later, she texted me again. This time she wanted $3,000. Was she kidding me? I just ignored her. But she kept bombarding me with texts and calls. It went on for days. She wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't give in, though, until this photo was sent to my phone. It was of me and Brian holding hands and clearly in love. Turns out my mom had been so desperate for the money, she'd turned up at my school one day to talk face to face, and that's when she saw us together. She then threatened me and said that if I didn't get her the money, she'd tell Adam's family what I was up to. This terrified me, because then I'd have nowhere to go, and I wouldn't be able to go to school anymore. I couldn't let that happen. I had no other choice but to keep asking Adam for the money with my lame excuses. From buying books, to a relative who was ill and needed treatment, you name it, I'd use it. Every time I asked Adam, he looked at me like he was worried about me and asked if I was okay. This made me feel even more guilty, because it seemed like he genuinely cared about me. To make up for it, I'd bake him cookies, and even knit a cute sweater for him as a birthday gift. But then, a few weeks later, he asked if we could talk. As soon as I walked into his room, he threw a bunch of photos at me. They were all of me and Brian. I couldn't believe it. Did my mother betray me? But that's not the case. He told me how he'd had someone follow me because he felt I'd been acting weird. Not only had he discovered I was dating someone, he'd also found out that I'd been lying about the money and giving it to my mom. He was so disappointed in me.
Please leave me alone. I don't want to see you anymore.
I was so worried I'd be kicked out of their house, but no one mentioned anything. His parents still chatted to me at dinner, and they seemed happy enough. Only Adam avoided me, which of course made me feel terrible. The only one I had to lean on right now was my sweet Brian. So after dinner one night, I decided to go over to his place. I really needed some comfort right now. But when I arrived outside, through the window, I saw another girl in his room. They started kissing, and I thought I was going to be sick. In a panic, I quickly crawled over and hid below his window to listen in. But aren't you a bit too close with that Sarah girl lately? Don't you dare.
Don't worry, Pumpkin. It was all just for you. I noticed that she lives in a big mansion with personal drivers and all. Her family must be filthy rich. So I just wanted to be a good friend and help them spend those money. You know, and maybe that way I could get you the new Chanel handbag that you always want.
Oh, really, honey? So, how's it going?
Well, a dud. Seems like she's the stingy kind of rich girl. Ugh, keeping every single nickel all to herself.
How was I supposed to believe what I'd just heard? My heart was shattered into pieces, and I couldn't hold it in anymore. I stood up and put my face against the window. You're dumped! Brian looked so shocked to see me there, but I didn't wait to see if he had anything to say. I just ran home in tears and locked myself in my room.
Sarah, open the door. Do you know how many days you haven't eaten for?
Sarah, open the door. If not, I will send someone to break the door down.
Oh, God, are you okay? What's going on?
Nothing. I'm sorry. Sorry for lying to you all this time. I didn't mean to. Suddenly, Adam hugged me and said,
It's okay. Don't cry. Now, can you just tell me what happened?
In tears, I told Adam the whole story. From being used by my mother to being betrayed by Brian. Perhaps this is what I deserve for lying to you.
Actually, if I were you, I wouldn't want to marry someone like me anyway.
You're a great guy. As long as you have confidence in yourself and live with a more positive attitude, good things will happen to you, I promise.
Even with this ugly face?
I looked up at Adam and, oh my gosh, the burn scar on his face. It was worse than I thought it would be. I reached out to touch it. It must have been so painful.
Can we start over? Keep helping me, okay?
I looked at Adam, smiled and nodded. So after that day, I continued to stay at Adam's house and help him get out of the isolated, self-deprecating life he'd been living. Gradually, his attitude improved, and he even started taking a business course to get ready for taking over his family's company in the future. I also encouraged him to start taking off his mask. Love everything about yourself, including that scar. As for my mom, she's currently being detained for her illegal gambling. Yep, that's what she spent all that money on. She'll probably end up in prison, and even though this isn't what I want for her, she kinda deserves it. Oh, and about the wedding, we postponed it. Lucky for me, both Adam and his parents want me to go to college first and pursue my dreams. Once I graduate, we'll probably start planning our wedding, though, and it'll be truly out of love this time.
Holy baloney! Who is that? This guy was next level hot. And there's more. As I neared him, he didn't run off looking afraid. Seeing me dumbfoundedly gasping, Scarlet elbowed me. "Wake up, chicka, we're late!" She giggled as she dragged me to class. I saw it. Never thought I'd see the day that Margot the troublemaker would go all gooey-eyed over some boy. Scarlet teased me. I blushed and was completely tongue-tied, eyes looking around awkwardly. "It's a shame you're basically a walking, talking boy repellent." Yeah, right. I lowered my head to think, and when I looked up, Scarlet was texting, probably some cringe overload message to her boyfriend Keith. I rested my chin on my hands and stared out of the window as I found myself daydreaming about that cute mystery guy. "What time do you call this? Are you trying to get me kicked out of this place for covering for you again?" So's. I had something super important to do with Alfie. Important, huh? So I could end up in trouble for covering your butt? Because you want to pull some lame prank with that loser? Nuh-uh. How many times do I have to tell you? We only pranked him once, and that jerk totally deserved it. About that jerk, he's the captain of the basketball team, and Alfie's my friend. Okay, he might look a bit intimidating, but he's a nice guy. But that jock not only knocked Alfie out with his basketball, he also took his money out of his pocket when he was down. We weren't going to let him get away with this. So that night, we snuck out and poured greasy cooking oil all over the field, which made the whole team slip and fall again and again. It was hilarious. Unfortunately, word of our involvement reached the principal, so Scarlet had to call her dad to help me. Okay, so this wasn't exactly the first time Scarlet had saved me. She only got mad as she had to save Alfie's butt too, even though she hates him. Come on, I'm sorry. Would you mind? It's midnight and we need to sleep. Shut up, Miley. No one asked you. Fine, go to bed and shut up so we can actually get some sleep. Poof, those girly girls. Wake up, princess. The class is over. I groggily got up and followed Scarlet like a zombie to the cafeteria. But then I came to an abrupt halt. There, standing on the corner of the hallway, was that handsome guy. What on earth is going on? I've asked Keith to do some research. Now, do you want my help or not? I still froze and couldn't say anything. OMG. I'd never felt so nervous like this before. I nodded while holding her arm. Wow. So all it took for the mighty Margot to turn into a timid wreck was some dude? Oh, and by the way, he's called Jared, and he's studying classical music. Very elegant. Huh? I blurted out. Classical music? This sucks! I mean, how's a girl like me ever gonna reach his level? Don't worry, I'll help you. Then she changed her attitude. On one condition. You know what? Scarlet demanded me to stop hanging out with Alfie, 'cause it was not good for the girly image I needed to get Jared's attention. Plus, I wouldn't be allowed to pass the dorm's curfew. If I broke these conditions, then she wouldn't help me anymore. Fine, I agree. Sorry, Alfie, you'll just have to carry on without me. Keith befriended Jared and asked him to come over to our school again to check on those pianos in the music room. When there's an oops emergency, he will leave Jared with me, who it turns out is struggling with the piano. Genius! As you can see, this plan is going well so far. Just this dress was really suffocating me. Ugh. But being around Jared seemed to suffocate me even more. Luckily, he was quite friendly, so we started talking easily, and now he's playing for me. Do you have any plans after school? No, not yet. I'm about to go to this music cafe in town. Would you like to join me? OMG! Of course I said yes! Does this count as a first date? We actually had a lot of fun. I was in seventh heaven. On our way back, I was startled when I saw Alfie across the street. Noticing me with Jared, Alfie glared at me with this maddened, wide-eyed look. I gave him the shush sign and looked away. No surprises. My phone beeped. You blew me off to hang out with that sissy boy? And what's with your clothes? Jeez, Alfie was angry for sure, but I couldn't do this right now. I'd promised Scarlett I wouldn't talk to him anymore, so I ignored the message and walked straight past him. As soon as I arrived back at the dorm, the girls cooed around and asked me about the date. They seemed so happy for me. So, when's the next date? He asked me to come over to his school tomorrow, and then we're gonna have dinner. Ah! The girls screamed in unison. Surprising, as I didn't think these grumpy girls cared this much about me. I was so excited about the date, so I arrived early at Jared's school to find him practicing with another girl. I walked into the room with a smile on my face, and Jared introduced me to her, Maeve. Then he told me to wait there and left to go to the bathroom. This Maeve girl sniggered, then looked me up and down and said, "Give it up. An unrefined girl like you doesn't deserve him." Huh? What on earth did I ever do to her? Angry, I knocked over her music sheets. She picked it up, then sternly said, "Just you wait. I won't let you get away with it." Then she shoved past me and stormed off. Then, at dinner, I couldn't help it. So, that Maeve? Our parents are very close, so we've been friends since we were little, and now we both study music. She seems really into you. I'm not so sure about that. We're just friends. So, he doesn't like that Maeve girl? I guess. Just forget about her. I have a very important date with Jared, and I need your help. Right at that moment, a call from Alfie arrived, but Scarlett was sitting right next to me, so I couldn't pick up. After a few calls, he texted me, "You gotta help me this time. I can't do it by myself." Oh, God help me. I didn't have the heart to abandon my friend. So, I decided to sneak out and go see Alfie. Okay, so it's not what you think. Those times I was late weren't because we were up to no good. We've been fixing up this abandoned house for these homeless kids instead. This time, one of those kids, Kevin, had a serious fever. I had to help Alfie borrow some money and take Kevin to the hospital. I tried to be deadly quiet as I crept into the dorm room, but I swear Scarlett is the lightest sleeper in existence. And sure enough, she was there waiting for me. "Oh, hi Margot. It's nice of you to join us." "Yeah, sorry. It was, an emergency." "You just can't help yourself, can you? You broke our agreement to go hang out with that thug friend of yours. I'm not helping you ever again." This sucked. It looked like I was on my own. This is it. My big date with Jared. His dad's the conductor here, and from what I can gather, that's a massive deal. Without Scarlett to help me find the right dress for this event was a nightmare. Oh man, everyone looked so luxurious and classy. I felt like a sore thumb. This obviously wasn't the world I belonged to. But Jared's gentle smile soothed me down a lot. But soon, Maeve was coming towards us. Ugh. "Jared, darling, congrats! I think this concert will be amazing." "Oh, it's you again. Nice dress." Ugh! She was really pulling on my leg. But stay calm. Now breathe. Breathe. Then they both talked about Mozart, Beethoven. I didn't understand a thing, as well as the whole concert. I didn't understand either. Afterward, Jared led me over to his parents. OMG, this was scary. I gave them the bouquet of flowers I've prepared and congratulated them on the concert. Luckily, they both seemed really friendly and were really content with my gift. But then Maeve appeared and hugged Jared's mom. "Jared, it's lovely to be around such polite girls." Smirking, Maeve replied, "I wouldn't be so sure about that. Margot here likes hiding her true personality." Okay, so I may have failed to keep my cool and blurted out some bad words. Oops. Jared and his parents looked shocked by this, but before I could try and rectify the situation, Maeve pulled out her phone and waved around a photo of me with Alfie. I wanted to explain, but I just ended up stuttering out a load of nonsense. In the end, Jared pulled me aside and told me, "I think it's best if you just leave." I ran out of there close to tears. Worse still, I couldn't run in this dumb dress. I'd lost Jared, and it was past curfew. So if I went back now, Scarlett would get mad at me. So I decided that I wasn't going to go back. Nope. Instead, I was going to run away. I'd been staying here for a couple of days. I feel safe here, and Alfie bought me some clothes and food. Ugh, why is she here? I wasn't in the mood for a lecture. But to my surprise, she rushed over to me and wrapped her arms around me. How could you just leave me like that? Have you any idea how worried I've been? Anyway, Alfie told me everything. I'm sorry for misjudging you. She pulled away. You do stink, though. There's one more person who wants to see you, Margot. I looked at him with confusion. Then at the door, it was Jared. Margot, when I saw that photo, I was shocked. I thought I must be some joke to you, and you were really with Alfie. But then I couldn't stop thinking about you. Now I've spoken to Scarlett and Alfie. I know better. I like you, Margot. The real you. And I don't want you to think you have to change for me. Do you think you can give this idiot another chance? I hesitated, pretending that it was something I had to think about. Then smirking, I shouted out yes and rushed into his arms. So, what now? Well, I'm back in the dorm, and yep, I still sneak out, and yep, Scarlett still covers for me. Jared and I are an official couple, and he's even helping me with a fundraiser concert to help out the homeless kids. So, I guess that this tough girl is actually not so tough after all.